The Montana Territory frontier. Late October, 1879. A brutal gale struck her face as she broke through the timberline, leaving a trail of crimson footprints across the razor-sharp, freezing prairie. Shredded garments clung to her, while grime, tear streaks, and crusted blood masked her pale skin. Dragging her battered body down the ridge, she spotted an isolated, weather-beaten cabin. A solitary roan stood hitched outside beneath a thin wisp of chimney exhaust. Straining to keep her chin up, she forced a raspy, gravelly plea from her throat. "I have nothing left, and I am fading fast." The figure resting on the veranda remained perfectly still. Resting forearms heavily on his thighs, he watched her like a cornered wolf. A worn brim obscured his gaze. After an agonizing pause, he descended the stairs, halting dangerously close. "I know the feeling," he murmured, his tone eerily calm and unwavering. "Get in here." But before reply could leave her lips, her legs gave out entirely. The rich scent of burning pine and the thick warmth of a woolen quilt jolted Holly awake. Squinting through the shadowy, fire-lit room, every inch of her battered flesh throbbed with agony. Yet she had miraculously survived the elements. Beside the crackling fireplace crouched her, mysterious savior, quietly tending to an iron kettle. Glancing over his shoulder, he grunted. Finally up, unable to speak, she offered a stiff nod. Rising to his feet, the stranger offered her a battered metal mug filled with fresh well water. Trembling fingers fumbled for the rim before his steady grip intervened. "Coulter Prescott," he offered. "Holly," she rasped. "Sumner." Acknowledging her with a curt dip of his chin, he retreated to his chair. He possessed an imposing, rugged frame, sporting coarse stubble across a chiseled, hardened jawline. Piercing eyes stared back at her, cold and gray as wet riverbed pebbles. Wearing stitched-up rags and bearing deeply scarred palms, he carried the heavy posture of a lifelong laborer. "How long were you stranded?" the frontiersman demanded. "I honestly lost track," she stammered. Meeting his patient silence, she confessed, "My caravan was traveling miles below this valley, bound for Helena until raiders ambushed us. It was absolute slaughter." "Any other survivors?" Fighting back devastating sorrow, she clenched her teeth. "No, I just bolted. Never looked back." He simply dipped his head, devoid of sympathy, yet radiating deep comprehension, and that quiet self-reliance every true Westerner understood. By dawn, she rested on the patio steps, swallowed by his oversized winter jacket. Fresh dressings wrapped her soles, while newly washed strands clung heavily to her bare nape. The solitary rancher wisely avoided prying into the horrors she had just escaped. Instead, he provided undisturbed rest, warm nourishment, and every ounce of comfort his meager home possessed. The kind of unspoken kindness that built the American West, one act at a time. Emerging into the chill, he passed her a steaming brew, locking eyes with her momentarily. "Why save my life?" Taking a seat nearby, he muttered, "A stranger paid that exact debt for me once." Dawn spilled spectacularly across the rugged plains, melting away the icy dew with brilliant amber hues that stretched forever under the big Montana sky. "I tailored clothes for a living," she murmured. "My sibling owned agricultural land out east. Losing him left me utterly destitute, forcing this western migration." The cowboy studied her profile. "Husband in the picture?" "Absolutely not," she fired back instantly. He merely drank his brew. Staring intently into her dark liquid, she heard him softly confess, "I was wed a lifetime ago." When she gently prodded about her fate, his grim reply, "Fever took her." Silenced the morning. As a handful of days slipped by, the survivor slowly regained her shattered strength. Eager to contribute, she busied herself fixing busted hardware on the poultry shed, scrubbing tin plates at the water basin, and organizing dried fabrics out back, all without his interference. Yet his watchful gaze lingered. "You handle a needle well," he grunted, tossing a shredded flannel her way at dusk. "Meant to patch that for 12 months. A subtle smirk finally cracked her grim facade. "Consider it done." Beneath the flickering oil lamp, she expertly stitched the fabric while he studied a weathered broadsheet. He held his tongue, yet his gaze lingered on her constantly. Come nightfall, she rested on the makeshift bed tucked into the one-room shack's shadows, hearing the gales howl outdoors and the leather of his footwear groaning across the floorboards. The bone-deep chill was finally gone. At dawn, she discovered him inside the stables, grooming the old mare. "You always lived out here by yourself?" she questioned. He glanced up past the saddle. "Used to have folks. Grew accustomed to the quiet. I hate imposing on you." "You ain't." "Truth is, I got nowhere left," she confessed softly. "Nobody's chasing you off," he murmured, speaking with a steady certainty that showed he had made up his mind long ago, the same resolve that had carved homesteads from nothing across these endless plains. She approached. "I am coming empty-handed." He pivoted around. "Breathing is plenty out here on the frontier." She maintained eye contact, refusing to blink even as warmth colored her face. "Much obliged." He gave a curt nod. "Camp out here until you figure things out." A peaceful routine settled over the homestead. Holly memorized the property line, mapping out the stream's bend and local game trails, while keeping the hearth warm. Torn flannel got patched, and fresh fabric finally covered the drafty glass panes. As winter's initial frost descended, she lingered at the threshold, exhaling clouds into the chill. Coulter stepped near. Witnessed a frontier freeze before? Barely made it through the fall harvest. A gentle, rare grin crossed his face. Evening brought them uncommonly close beside the hearth, their boots accidentally touching. Both left their boots right there. "Figured my days of resting easy were gone forever," she whispered. "Reckoned my heart was permanently dead." Glancing over, she asked, "It ain't?" Their gazes locked. "Nope, sure ain't." Hesitantly, she extended an arm to grasp his weathered palm. He intertwined their digits. Hours afterward, as she rested against his collarbone, he instinctively pulled her close. Embers flickered over the timber, while a brutal gale screamed across the prairie outdoors. Within the walls, silence reigned. Words were entirely unnecessary. Shutting her eyelids tight, a long-lost calm washed over her pulse, while his grip promised absolute, unwavering protection and the kind of steadfast partnership that defined the American pioneer's spirit. Daybreak chased the storm away, abandoning a fragile quiet over the frosted peaks. Holly shoved the heavy stable, gates apart quietly, avoiding disturbing the hens sleeping above. Those scuffed leather heels, finally belonging to her, stepped softly across the hay. The mare glanced backward, twitching her ears in greeting. "That beast warmed up to you way faster than she ever did me," Coulter noted from the adjacent pen, exhaling white mist into the freezing air. "Animals can sense I will never overwork them on a heavy plow," Holly replied. "Golden rule I apply to everyone." Slouching against a pillar, he observed her stroking the animal's mane with expert gentleness. "You respect every creature's spirit. Pain is universal out here." He remained quiet momentarily. He simply retreated to grab the morning oats. Passing the pail over, their hands collided, yet they let the contact linger. "Got my mind on that southern boundary," he muttered. "Some timber's gone completely bad. The drift's gonna knock it flat." "Let me pitch in," she insisted. "Ain't no way you are hoisting a sledgehammer with those delicate bones. I am perfectly capable of hauling lumber or holding the wire steady while you excavate. Healing a ruined homestead takes more than just lumber." He watched her, seeing pure iron in her eyes. "Fair enough, then." They labored till mid-afternoon, breathing thick frost into the bitter air along the ridge behind the stables. She gripped the guide rope tight while he slammed his shovel into the ice-locked dirt, muscles straining. Whenever he stopped to wipe his sweating forehead, she passed him another wooden rail silently. They fell into a seamless, wordless frontier rhythm. "You always this hard-headed?" he grunted, hammering the timber down. "You always shocked when somebody actually keeps up?" A deep, unshielded laugh slipped from his chest. Later that evening, Coulter fed the fire and took a seat near her while she stitched up a heavy woolen sock salvaged from a dusty trunk. "You ever long for your old life?" he questioned. "Not at all," she murmured, guiding her needle. "Just the folks, but never the land," he agreed, pausing for more. My brother barely spoke, but he believed dirt was meant for living, not claiming. Back east felt like another man's property. She stared into the pitch-black glass. This wild country feels like it is holding its breath. I used to believe that too, he admitted softly. But putting Clara in the ground killed my patience for the future entirely. Dropping her mending, she asked. Silence swallowed the cabin, save for the blazing hearth. Words failed her. Yet she drifted her fingers across the rough wood toward him, hovering close, offering a choice without demanding it. Dawn, her heavy jacket hung by the entryway, repaired. She traced the clumsy threadwork along the collar. She had not sewn that. His eye could not let you freeze out there with ripped fabric. I patched it up roughly. A faint grin broke through her hardened features. You do fine work. He scraped the cast iron, jaw tight. Figured come the spring thaw, I ought to hit the settlement for provisions. I will ride along, she offered. If you are willing, that sounds nice. She took a seat opposite him, lacing her fingers. Settlers ask questions. They will stare, sure, but they will look away fast when they realize I am keeping you. She locked onto his stare. You really mean to? I do, he vowed, without hesitation. Later that twilight, with fresh powder dropping from the sky, she lingered by the stables, gazing at the frozen ridges under a fading gray canopy. Coulter stepped out, jacket unbuttoned, brim pulled down tight. You ever consider abandoning this claim? She questioned. Used to. But suddenly, I found an anchor. She turned to him, gaze unflinching. Same here. He finally grasped her fingers, and she welcomed the rough touch, walking hands as the desolate prairie night swallowed them whole. No dramatic promises, simply the silent vow of two survivors tired of escaping. A new breeze kicked up, gentler this time, wrapping around their frames like destiny taking root in the rich Montana soil. The blizzard gripped the valley for 7 straight days, stripping away the storm clouds while burying the frontier in total silence. Every dawn, Holly woke before the sun breached the ridge, marching to the outbuilding for firewood. Her battered body still burned from old wounds, yet she moved with absolute, unspoken drive. On day 6, the heavens finally broke apart, painting the treacherous ice fields a brilliant amber. Coulter was out tracking the snare lines down by the dead river. Out on the gallery, she sat solitary, working life back into cracked leather reins. A hunting raptor glided above, completely silent, causing her to halt and track its flight. Upon his return, he toted a dressed jackrabbit alongside a mysterious hide sack, tightly bound with twine. Discovered this hidden beneath a boulder out by the sandy ridge, he muttered, dropping the parcel. Not mine. Gingerly, she unfastened it. Inside sat copper and marrow fasteners, a whittled buckhorn toggle, and a heavily used finger guard. Caressing the jagged horn piece, she murmured, "Wonder if a traveler abandoned this intentionally." Her fingertips grazed the battered sewing cap. Used to carry a mending kit. Made this. While she fetched water, he butchered the game. The absolute quiet hanging between them felt incredibly heavy, far from empty. A rich stillness forged by mutual survival and the hard-won independence that defined life on the open range. With the rabbit broth bubbling, the rugged frontiersman collapsed into his wooden seat, crossing his dusty boots, dragging her little bench. Across the floorboards, she sat closely nearby. Never bothered inquiring about your past life, she stated. Prior to settling this dirt? Herded livestock from Arizona toward Kansas. Caught hot lead in my collarbone outside Cowtown. Turned into a ghost. Stumbled on this acreage via some drifter down in Laramie. He quit. I refused to. Ever get the urge to ride away? Never, he grunted, though having a partner understand these acres would not hurt. She stared at her palms. Mastering a territory demands patience. You are already planting roots. Hours passed. While fierce gales whistled against the timber frame, she wiped dishwater from her skin. The hardened homesteader grew utterly silent, staring out the glass at the pitch-black prairie, haunted by nothing but the lantern's mirrored glow. Had a vision yesterday, she confessed softly. My very first since arriving. He shifted his stance. About my kin. Standing near the prairie, uttered absolutely nothing, merely stared, checking if I had survived this wilderness. Have you? Perhaps. Grabbing the iron, he stoked the embers. Used to see my late wife after the fever took her. She would stand by the corral, combing her tresses, face hidden. Does the grief fade? Never. But the sting dulls. A heavy hush washed over them. Crackling logs and the rhythmic beating of the timepiece echoed loudly. As she retreated to her pallet, no evening pleasantries were exchanged. Their gazes simply locked in a deep, unspoken understanding. She remained sleepless well into the frigid night, absorbing the whistling gales and groaning timber joints. Physical exhaustion weighed heavily, yet absolute mental clarity remained present. Come dawn's early light, she discovered him driving iron nails into the stable siding. Brushing away frost, she approached him. Stepping away, he folded his forearms. Reckoned the warning chime might prove useful if danger strikes while I am scouting the high ridge. Gazing at the metal clapper suspended from the rafters, she whispered, "You rigged this for me? Only logical move." Extending her arm, she gripped the lanyard. A crisp ring pierced the frosty air. "I will pull this when trouble comes. I will come running," he vowed. When dusk swallowed the frontier, she abandoned her bed. Instead, she lingered by the hearth, anticipating his safe return. He stomped the blizzard off his boots. She rose, eyes fierce. Done shivering in the shadows, she told him. He froze completely. She closed the gap. "Need to rest by the fella who dragged me from hell without demanding a toll." His silence stretched. "And I gotta see the sunrise. Certain you will not cast me adrift." 3 heavy bootfalls erased the space between them, his calloused grip swallowing her fingers. Never. Skulls pressed together, mingling their desperate breaths against the hearth's glow. Vows meant nothing out here. Silence sufficed. Survival meant forging their bond drop by drop, through hammered timber, biting frost, and melting ice. As morning broke, 2 stray souls finally anchored, abandoning their endless flight. Spring bled out sluggishly, slashing muddy veins into the stubborn white drifts framing their territory. Thick muck swallowed the rig's spokes. The wind tasted heavily of wet dirt and crushed timber. Perched by the water pump, she wrestled a leather needle through a busted rig. Life had flooded back into her face. The brutal prairie sun painted her skin warm, while rogue locks danced over her eyes. He trudged up the riverbank, dragging a stubborn beast loaded with freshly chopped timber. He offered no greeting. Letting the frontier silence speak, he ditched the tether and squatted by the rusted gear. "Fixing up fresh gear?" he grunted, popping a wax lid. "Fixing yours," she fired back. The leather was rotting by the clasp. One more ride would have snapped it. His eyes tracked her calloused fingers. "You got a knack for spotting ruin." She snipped the cord. Survival instincts. Out here, missing the early cracks means catching a bullet or a broken neck. Rising, he shoved the tin away. Spotted something mighty strange out on the eastern ridge. "Looks like ghost timber. Come give it a look." Trailing him beyond the stable, boots sinking deep into the muddy incline, they marched. Right on the boundary line, suffocated by creeping greenery and dead sap, sat a decaying beam studded with twisted, blood-orange iron spikes. "Another soul staked a claim here?" she whispered. "Maybe a gold chaser or a drifting outlaw. Ain't certain." Kneeling, she clawed the muck away. Ground's scorched black here. A deliberate fire. Could be cleared weeds, could be a warning. Care at all? Staring at the hostile horizon, he muttered, "Just proves ghosts walked this claim first." Getting up, she gripped his sleeve. "Well, they are gone." By sundown, a relentless storm hammered them. She guarded the glass pane, oil light stretching her dark silhouette across the floorboards. He methodically ground a hunting knife against a whetstone. Staring into the dark, she asked, "Who gave you that scar?" The blade halted. A rustling job turned into a slaughter. Trespassed where we were not welcome. Some homesteader caught me in his sights. The lead tore clean through meat and bone, bled into the dirt for hours. Realized I was just mortal. She spun around. "That push you to quit the gang?" "Nah." I rode on, but I swore I would never blindly take another boss' orders. Closing the distance, she curled up right next to his boots, bracing against the cold. If you had not chased cows, then what? Pondering the violent past, he murmured, "Drawing maps, I prefer seeing the trail ahead. And whatever lurks in those shadows," a ghost of a grin appeared. "Used to sketch coal designs on old wrapper scraps, gowns I could not stitch, cabins I would never claim. You are standing inside one today." Yeah, that is the crazy thing. Distant thunder rumbled like a hungry beast over the prairie. Silence stretched between them for a while, his hunting knife resting idle. Heavy droplets drummed a relentless beat upon the shingles. Dawn broke clear, the tempest gone, leaving an atmosphere thick with damp prairie and crushed sap. Holly returned from the roost carrying fresh yokes, her heavy footwear coated in thick frontier clay. Coulter chopped firewood beneath the makeshift shelter, bare forearms exposed and slick with dirty perspiration. She dropped her daily haul, casually resting against the wooden jamb. Ever consider expanding this place? The rhythm of his hatchet never broke. Got a vision? Another parlor? Perhaps an attic? Thinking long-term? She crossed her elbows, picturing some fresh crops, plus a solid dining board that will not tilt under heavy weight. Resting his hatchet, he wiped off his forehead. "Guess you are putting down permanent roots." Closing the gap, she nodded. "Sure am." He restrained himself. Not today. Yet his gaze suggested the turbulent frontier earth had finally stopped shaking beneath his boots. Later that evening, he handed over a creased parchment sheet. Displayed there, crude graphite strokes outlined their shack, featuring an entirely new addition darkly blocked out. "Hardly a master architect," he muttered, "but figured this is our square one." Tracing the markings, she softly noted, "You carved out room for a veranda. Figured you would appreciate it." Meeting his intense gaze, she agreed completely. Bathed in lantern glow, a profound mutual silence reigned. Even the prairie gales hushed. Embers faded, revealing an unspoken bond forged through deliberate patience rather than reckless pioneer speed. Stacking frontier sunrises like sturdy lumber and shared memories like solid masonry. She finally grasped his rough palm, and he eagerly squeezed back. Rhythmic pounding started well before the morning ice melted off the meadow. A relentless, driving cadence bouncing through the dense timber past the bluff. Holly positioned herself near the fresh wooden skeleton, calculating board dimensions strictly by sight. As Coulter hammered spikes into structural beams, timber dust coated the bottom of her dress, propping another slab against the structure. She braced it firmly while he scaled the rungs. "Think this skeleton holds up?" she questioned. "It is rock solid," he assured. "Your alignment beats anything I have built." Retreating a pace, she dusted the grit from her hands. "Terrible at stitching cloth, but I can certainly frame corners tight." He peeked downward, flashing a rugged, shadowed smirk. "Almost seems like you belong in this brutal territory." "Never had a true destiny," she countered, grabbing another heavy log. "Yet I am discovering my grit." The freshly framed barriers rose with methodical, cautious precision. Each timber earned through grueling labor and sheer mental endurance. Holly began carving hidden tallies onto the interior struts, making slight scratches, representing every sunup they endured together. She kept it a total secret for now. Those grooves were not tracking the calendar. They were capturing history. Once the June heat hit, wild stalks grew waist-deep across the distant grazing acreage, while native blossoms washed the bottom valley in a creeping wave of vibrant hues. Holly paused near the boundary of the fresh expansion, hot, sun-baked timber underfoot, dragging a dusty forearm over her face. Coulter fractured raw cedar slabs for the exterior fencing. He halted upon catching her intense stare. "Ever consider taking another spouse?" she probed suddenly. Pushing his brim back, he murmured, "I reckon I do." Barefoot, she descended the steps, boots gripped tight. "You never popped the question. Ain't one to force it. Push me, and I would vanish." Dropping his blade, he rubbed dirt from his calloused palms against worn denim. "If the question got posed, what is your answer?" He closed the distance, deliberate as a shadow, until the heavy frontier silence hung between them like suspended breath. "Ain't holding no silver band, no parson, nor poetry," he confessed, rough. You hold me, she swore. That is plenty. 3 dawns passed before they took vows by the riverbank. The lone widow from 4 claims over stood by. The widow's boy whittled a humble timber crucifix, wedging it deep into the harsh dirt using heavy rocks. A circuit rider traveled from Medicine Bow, casting holy scripture across the rushing currents of the untamed creek. Holly donned a hand-sewn, indigo-dyed cotton gown. Coulter stood tall in the rugged fabric she had repaired their initial tense encounter, bearing that frayed, reinforced shoulder. Following a modest feast of hardtack and preserved fruit beneath ancient timber, golden rays baked their spines, and grasping her calloused fingers tightly, the rugged frontiersman refused to release his grip till nightfall swallowed the valley. Brutal winters yielded to spring. A sturdy veranda arose, which Holly quickly crowded with medicinal weeds, earthenware, alongside a custom-whittled seat. Out back, she broke stubborn soil for root crops, wild legumes, and sharp bulbs. Whenever he ventured toward the corrupt settlement, she rode shotgun. Purchasing a milder steed for her journeys, they dubbed the loyal beast Alder. At daybreak, she spotted her husband looming near the jagged edge of their claim, staring into the mysterious horizon where prairie swallowed heaven. "Are we anchored here forever?" she questioned softly. He gave a deliberate nod. "Nothing beyond those dangerous peaks calls my name." She grazed his sleeve. "Thought I would forever wander this unforgiving waste." He countered softly. "It ain't about the dirt beneath us. It rests on who shares it." By dusk, they nursed bitter brew from metal cups, watching infinite galaxies ignite. He snared her trembling wrist, rough skin radiating heat against hers. "My mind circles around this sanctuary we have violently forged," he muttered. "This homestead, our survival. We claimed it," she replied. "Every timber, every dawn." Shifting his intense gaze, he challenged, "You truly content?" Her stare locked back, absolutely unflinching. "Yes. Never believed this brutal world allowed it, but yes." He descended, claiming her lips with quiet, absolute certainty. Her fingers found anchor upon his scarred ribs, feeling his stoic pulse drumming beneath worn fabric. They lingered out there until the embers turned to ash, wilderness shadows swallowing them whole as the vast prairie exhaled a chilling, mysterious fog. Decades bled away. Their fortress aged, stubbornly defying frontier gales. Constant gripping polished the timber railing. That meager crop exploded into sprawling acres. Coulter constructed a dedicated rack for curing medicinal wilderness tubers. Meanwhile, Holly preserved exotic flora in canvas tomes, tagging them using dark pigment brewed from crushed wild walnuts. No heirs were born, yet their legacy thrived. The brutal earth, shifting weather, and their unbreakable bond sufficed. Come nightfall, they voiced frontier tales, bartered with distant outcasts, hitting the settlement every 30 days for ammunition, rations, and hushed mercantile gossip over Black Java. That ragged corner bed remained intact, sitting completely abandoned in the shadows. It stood as a monument to their desperate origins, not past grief. At midnight, she occasionally bolted upright, analyzing the howling gales for approaching threats. Yet the terrifying drafts that once hunted her across the timberline were dead. These modern breezes whispered. They hugged the roofline like a haunting melody, allowing her to face her husband, soaking in his rugged warmth, burying her cheek against his weathered collar. The outlaw instinctively shifted, pulling her against the bitter draft, weathering the brutal night. 2 weary pioneers who finally realized they shared a sanctuary, not salvation. Their story echoed across the Montana hills, a living proof that the true heart of the American West was not in striking gold or claiming land, but in 2 souls choosing each other against all odds and building something lasting from the wild.